This is your stimulus check daily news. So it looks like Wall Street got a new highs, new hits, tops that happened this week because Jerome Powell had said that there might be a possibility to extend out a lot of the stimulus programs that he's doing right now. But he also warned that possibly could happen towards the end of the year, that they might taper back on that stimulus. That's good news. More stimulus out to those, basically they're gonna be buying up all these assets, which is crazy. I mean, if you're in the stock market, it's a good time to be in the stock market. If they start to take off some of the programs and start to taper down some of the stimulus, it might not be that good. Also, there are states right now that are sending out stimulus checks to people. California is one of the big ones right now. That's all the talk right now of stimulus checks going out from California. I think it's personally good news because for the other states, if you live in another state besides California, I think it's good news because every state received billions and billions of dollars. In fact, 350 billion total was created in the American Rescue Plan for each state. I think, and I'm not sure about this, but I think it's a possibility that these states have to spend that money. They have to give it stimulus somehow. If not, they have to return the money back to the federal government. And you know, these states, once they get that money, they don't want to return it. So they might have to use that stimulus plan out there. And I'm going to cover a lot of the states that are doing this right now because there is about 9 different states that are sending out stimulus to those in that state. And that's on top of the $1,400 payments that went out to everybody earlier this year. Now, a fourth stimulus check, it could be a possibility into this $3.5 trillion plan that Nancy Pelosi has set up. It's the budget plan. Could it be a possibility that the fourth stimulus check is inside of there? And they want to extend out a lot of these programs that are ending. September 6th is the big date right now for the unemployment. And I think people in Congress are going to be rallying to try to get a new bill passed, to try to get that unemployment extended out. That's what they did back in January of last year. So I think September is going to be a great year for stimulus. A great month for stimulus. It's going to get Congress back into working again. August was always the time where they just weren't working on more stimulus. And then they come back, rally up, try to get more bills out, and then hopefully get more checks out to those that need it the most. So I'm going to cover a lot of details in this video for you. That way you know what's happening with stimulus checks. So Jerome Powell recently just came out. He was in Jackson Hole, and he came out and said that he's not really coming out and saying we're not, going to stop giving out stimulus, but he talks about towards the end of the year it might be coming back. And what they do is the Federal Reserve is the one that creates the money. They're the ones that print the money into existence. They take the money and they give it out to they buy the treasury bonds from the federal government. And then the federal government can take those and they can spend that money. Now what they've been doing is they've been buying assets during this, so they're kind of bypassing what they should be doing, and they're just going in and buying assets. Now this has inflated the stock market crazy amounts, and if they stop doing the asset purchases, it's going to have a big effect on the stock market, which could collapse. Now this is something that they're talking about the new Delta variant on what's happening with, and they're going to be monitoring that. They're going to see if this is going to be something that they need to look at and moving forward if they're going to continue on with the stimulus. If the Federal Reserve is continuing on with the stimulus program, I think it's good for the Treasury of the United States to see that, because then they want to turn around and send out payments to everybody. I don't know if the Fed would stop doing stimulus and the Treasury stop doing stimulus at the same time. That's what we're going to have to see. But again, this $3.5 trillion stimulus plan, it's a budget plan that Nancy Pelosi had put up, and she's talking about getting this passed. Now, Jerome Powell said he warned that an over hasty tightening of policy could be particularly harmful to jobs. He's talking about if they're getting too tight, the Federal Reserve is going to be raising interest rates and try to get that money, back into try to get balance that inflation that's happening right now. They're going to have to work on getting their policy set up to where they can create some type of interest rates that are good for the economy without actually crashing it. They're working on this tightrope right now. It's crazy. So the fourth stimulus check, this is something that I think is going to try to get into this new bill. So Congress approved the $1.9 trillion in stimulus payments to most Americans making less than $75,000 as part of the American Rescue Plan. So that out of that plan, the $1,400 payments went out. There's a possibility that the fourth stimulus check is going to go out in the new $3.5 trillion plan. This is the new budget plan that Nancy Pelosi has set up. This is where I think the fourth stimulus check will happen. Why? Because the American Rescue Plan, or American Families Plan, is inside of this budget plan. That's going to try to extend out the child tax credits. That's going to try to get more payments out to everyone. Always in the past, if you haven't received any of the checks, so if you should have received a $1,200 payment or $600 payment, $1,400 payment, if you haven't received those, There is a non-filers tool on the Treasury website. You can go there, fill that out, and there's a section in there called Recovery Rebate Credit. Inside Recovery Rebate Credit, then you let them know you never received those payments and that you would like to get those payments out quicker, or get those payments out to you that you've never received them. But you have to do the non-filers tool, and you have to file with the Treasury. Also, they're processing all the payments now, so every week they're sending out new payments in these plus up payments and these bonus payments. If you did file your returns in 2020 and you had made less amount in 2020 than you did in 2019, then they're going to give you a plus up payment to get you caught up to that $1,400 payment. And if you added new dependents, new children, maybe new grandparents, then they would come up and be able to be eligible for a $1,400 payment. But for me, it's like $3,200 what the federal government has sent out over the past year and a half. I think that a lot of these states, cities, they close down their economies. They force these businesses to shut down. I get it, there's a pandemic, but when you force businesses to close down, then those people can't support themselves that work there. Those employees aren't getting paid. If the business closed down, they can't turn around and spend that money on those employers. And so it puts a lot of pressure on small businesses, and that small businesses, they end up collapsing because they just can't get enough customers coming in order to get people buying, their products or services or whatever is value they're putting out into the economy. So I think personally, the federal government should have come in and had some type of monthly payment to those that need it the most during that. And then once they lifted the economy or put the economy back up and let businesses open back up, it would have been a lot better, because at least people would have had the ability to support themselves with some type of monthly payment. They did put in a lot of those moratoriums for evictions and all that. So a lot of people sat for a year and a half on not paying the rent, and they were able to either pocket that money or go spend that money. But those programs are ending right now. So there's a lot of people that weren't paying the rent. They're trying to figure out what they're going to be doing. So the big talk right now is California. They're stepping up and they're sending out $600 checks to everybody that's eligible for that. I think it's good news for a lot of the other states, again, because every state received billions and billions of dollars, and they should take that money and turn around and pay some of the people in that area. There are a lot of states, Florida, Tennessee, what is it? Not Colorado, but Colorado's sending out payments. But you got Florida, Tennessee, you got Georgia. These are the states that, Michigan, these are the states that are giving stimulus payments back to teachers. Now, Florida's actually sending up stimulus checks to frontline workers, police, firemen, all that. I think it's good news if you're a teacher and you're a fireman, but again, California is the only one that's saying, okay, those that are eligible for it, we're going to be giving you a stimulus check. California received $35 billion in that American Rescue Plan. They're turning around and they're going to be sending those payments out. If you do live in California, you have to at least live there for 6 months, and then you have to have been able to file your returns with the franchise tax board in that area for you to receive those payments. If you had a bank account, they'll drop that money right into your bank account. If you have obviously an address, they'll send a check out to you through that. So I definitely wouldn't move to California just to pick up a check, but if you do live there, it's definitely good. Just wait for a lot of the other states to get some of their stimulus checks and get their payments out to everybody. Again, California received $35 billion in stimulus money from the federal government, and they're turning around and spending maybe $1 billion of that back into the people that need it. New Mexico received $1.8 billion. They are turning around and only spending $5 million of that $1.8 billion back into their citizens. A little stingy. Florida received $9 billion and they only spent $110 million in stimulus back to the people. So for me, I think a lot of these cities, a lot of these states got a ton of money. They should turn around and give some type of stimulus. They should do what California did and just send out a one-time payment to everybody. Now moving forward, there is this big talk of a monthly payment and this monthly payment going out. I think they're going to have to Congress is going to have to get some kind of reoccurring payment that's going out to the Treasury can just send payments out to everybody, or the Federal Reserve is going to have to come in and get some type of stable coin app that they put on your phone and where you can take that money and go spend it. The whole thing with stimulus was try to get people to spend that money into the economy. And I think what happens, a lot of people didn't spend in the economy. They took that money, invested it, and then that's why we see a huge jump in the stock market. People took that money, went to Robinhood, spent it into that. That's where the money went. It didn't actually go into helping small businesses where it should have gone. But if the Fed can get some type of stable coin set up, that might reverse those changes a little bit, and then they'll have to, it's still going to be very inflationary. It's still going to have to figure out the inflation on that stable coin, but at least it'll get stimulus out to people that can take it and spend it. So the velocity of money going through would be a lot quicker. So if you have any questions about any of the stimulus, what you can do is drop those questions in the comments below. So this is your daily stimulus check, updated information for today.
Why did your Republican colleagues vote for this bill?
You know, good question. I have to say I don't know the answer to that question, and I'm disappointed that anybody would support this bill. You said it exactly right. This isn't an infrastructure bill. This is a radical left woke politics bill that has stuff like gender identity mandates in it, the radical equity agenda, the Green New Deal. That's all in this bill. And by the way, it's going to cost trillions of dollars pork barrel spending. There's stuff like bridges and highways in Canada in this bill. We ought to be building highways and bridges in the United States, not in foreign countries. This is a bad bill, and that's why I voted no.
So did the Republicans get scammed again?
Yeah, I'm afraid so. I mean, listen, this is all Joe Biden's agenda. That's the key thing to know. This is the Biden far-left agenda, spending trillions of dollars to remake our society and to remake it in the image of the woke left. That's what he wants to do, and that's what he is succeeding in doing right now. And so it's absolutely imperative that Republicans say, no, this is not the right vision for this country. We're not an evil country. We're a good country. We don't need to be remade. Americans need to be empowered to live their lives. That needs to be our agenda. I mean, what it looks like to me is over $1 trillion in pork barrel spending. Only a small percentage of that actually goes to roads and bridges and in my state waterways, which are important. And what do Americans get stuck with? They get left with a massive tab that they're going to have to pay for with increased taxes, and they get left with woke politics, which is what most of this bill goes to pay for. That's why it's such a bad deal, and that's why Republicans need to oppose.
Which of those do you think are the most important, and what do you think is the most important thing that's being left out?
You know, it certainly is good news that the Democratic Party and the government has decided to do what it should have been doing for the last 40 years. So credit where credit is due. The question now here is how much progressives are going to be able to keep focus on all that still needs to be done, given the fact that we are in an unprecedented crisis, the likes of which we haven't seen in nearly double that time. So, for example, it's obviously incredible. This was a huge part of the Bernie campaign that we wanted not just Medicare for all, but for Medicare to include dental, hearing, and vision. It also remains crucial that more people get access to that who are younger and younger, so that yes, eventually everybody in America can have access to those kinds of programs. It's incredibly important not to lose sight of all of the things that Joe Biden can do by virtue of executive order, including canceling student debt. And this is a conversation that we recently had with former Bernie deputy campaign manager Ari Rabenhoft in this two-part episode that we had come out this week, where there's a very different set of concerns and concentration for activists and people who are playing an outside game than insiders. And in moments like this where there is some progress, it can be difficult for progressives to continue to push for the things that are very much needed against the overwhelming media tide of you should be happy with this progress. And of course, progress is good, and Bernie Sanders has been fighting a very valiant fight for a very long time to get these things achieved. And I think it's appropriate to have a moment of victory while also being kind of clear-eyed about the path before us.
The relief bill is still winding its way through Congress, but today 10 Democratic senators are laying down a marker for the next stimulus package. They're calling on President Biden to make sure that his massive infrastructure and investment plan includes an extension of unemployment benefits and recurring stimulus checks, and importantly, that those benefits are tied to broader economic conditions. Well, this idea of automatic stabilizers has won the backing of key Senate committee chairmen Bernie Sanders, Ron Wyden, and Sherrod Brown. In a new letter to President Biden, they wrote, "This crisis is far from over, and families deserve certainty that they can put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. Families should not be at the mercy of constantly shifting legislative timelines and ad hoc solutions." Enhanced unemployment benefits will run out in just about 2 weeks. The current relief bill would extend them through the end of August, but after that, lawmakers and workers would face another cliff. Now, I've talked to unemployed workers about this, and they told me that they feel burned that their benefits will be cut off at an arbitrary date, and that lawmakers' promises of making those benefits retroactive haven't panned out. So you can see how the fight on Capitol Hill is already starting over what happens after relief gets passed. Well, the reality is that there's actually bipartisan support for the idea of tying these benefits to economic conditions. This is something that Republicans in the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus had supported during previous rounds of negotiations. They called them boosters. But the biggest issue with it is that it can be complicated to explain to both other lawmakers and to the public. And then lawmakers would have to also agree on what the metrics would be for when the benefits would go up or be phased out. So some of the data points that lawmakers are talking about to tie these benefits to would be primarily either the unemployment rate or the employment to population ratio. So that way, if the job market is looking really lousy, then they'd be able to give unemployed workers bigger benefits. Once the job market looks a little bit better, some of those extra supports would then fade away. The question, though, is would this just be in place during the pandemic, or are we moving to a system where all benefits are being considered on a sliding scale? And there is differing opinions on how long this type of new policy should last.
Let's go right to NBC's Ali Vitale on Capitol Hill. And Ali, we want to talk about that bipartisan infrastructure bill. Where do things stand there right now?
At a little bit of a standstill, Joe. You're right that we saw a key procedural vote just happen over the course of the last few hours during this rare Saturday session here in the Senate. That vote is going to allow them to move forward procedurally onto 30 hours of debate. That effectively takes the senators down the longer path to get to an eventual vote on this bipartisan infrastructure bill. Simultaneously, though, here in the halls of Congress, senators are negotiating for a faster track option, effectively trying to get all 100 senators on board with a process that would allow them to shrink down the numbers of hours of debate, figure out what amendments they're going to elevate as things that need to be debated here. That could be the faster way to get to the ultimate vote on this bipartisan bill. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer laid it out this way. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of if they take the easy path, which is the shorter path, or the hard path, which is the longer path that we've seen them kind of beginning to trudge down here on this Saturday. Other senators, though, seeming to echo that sentiment from Schumer. Listen, for example, to Senator Debbie Stabenow just last hour with our colleague.
We know what the final outcome is going to be. I believe the votes are there for this, and certainly the American people have waited long enough for Infrastructure Week. Okay, so we are, so at this point, I don't see what the Republicans that are objecting gain. Other than if they just don't want to see the president succeed and they don't want to see us address the problems that the American people want us to tackle.
Joe, she's right about one thing. I've been covering infrastructure weeks in Washington for years now. This is certainly, and you can feel it on both sides as you talk to sources, this is certainly as close as they have gotten to actually getting something done on infrastructure. So really, it's a matter of an artificial clock on this process right now. There is a fast way to do it now. There is a fast way to do it now. There is a fast way.